Just last week, I was listening in as Susan Beaumont was sharing a story from her life. It seems she and her husband chose to take a biking vacation, bicycling through Acadia National Park. Now, the brochure for the park describes the park as gentle, rolling hills, the perfect setting for a biking holiday. The reality, however, is quite a bit different. There are really steep hills, and it is a real challenge to bike it. Now, after walking her bike up hill after hill after hill, Susan knew she had to come up with a new strategy. She knew she was psyched out just by looking up the hill that was stretching in front of her, so she decided to keep her eyes on her feet. Rather than focusing on getting up the hill, she hit upon the strategy of completing just 10 more revolutions of the pedals. With her eyes on her feet, she'd count 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 10, and then when she'd get to 10, she'd start all over again. Now, focused on her feet and focused on the pedals, she was able, she says, to slog it up hill after hill. But she readily admits she wasn't having any fun and wasn't enjoying it one little bit. But with her newfound strategy, she could keep going, and she was making progress. Now, the friends who were biking with her suggested all sorts of strategies she might try about shifting her gears, but Susan was deaf to all of that. She didn't want to hear anything. She just wanted to keep her eyes on her feet and continue counting 1 through 10. That's when she says she felt a nudge and heard a gentle whisper, just 2 words: look up. Now, that wasn't her strategy, looking up, but she said she's learned as a faithful Christian to pay attention to those nudges and gentle whispers. And when she looked up, she could not believe what she saw. It was one of those picturesque moments that might be captured on a calendar. There was a white stone lighthouse hugging the shoreline, with its red tile roof touching the clear blue sky and the brilliant blue of the ocean below. And over it all was a full rainbow arcing over the lighthouse. With her eyes on the ground, she might have made it up the hill, but she would have missed that amazing picture. Today is Transfiguration Sunday in the life of the church, and so today we turn to Mark's account of the Transfiguration. It's in the 9th chapter, beginning in the 2nd verse. After 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John with him and led them up a high mountain where they were all alone. There Jesus was transfigured before them. His clothes became dazzling white, whiter than anyone in the world could bleach them. And there appeared before them Elijah and Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He didn't know what to say. They were so frightened. Then a cloud appeared and covered them, and a voice came from the cloud. "This is my son, whom I love. Listen to him." Suddenly, when they looked around, they no longer saw anyone with them except Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus gave them orders not to tell anyone what they had seen until the Son of Man had risen from the dead. They kept the matter to themselves, discussing what rising from the dead might mean. This comes at the heart of Mark's gospel, just after Peter has proclaimed that Jesus is the Messiah. And Jesus is hiking up a mountain with 3 of his disciples, Peter, James, and John. I don't know, maybe the higher they climbed, the harder it was. There was a lot of huffing and puffing up that mountainside, all for some time alone, some time together, some time to pray. But there on the mountainside happened what none of them expected to happen. Jesus was transfigured. His appearance changed from the inside out, dazzling, shimmering, glistening, brilliant, radiant, bursting at the seams with light. And if all of that wasn't awe-inspiring enough, just like that, Moses, Elijah, the law, and the prophets are there talking with Jesus. And when the entire scene is enveloped in a cloud, they hear a voice saying, "This is my son, whom I love. Listen to him." Mountaintops and clouds, dazzling bright light and heavenly voices. It's a lot to wrap your head around. On this last Sunday of the season of Epiphany, we have a real epiphany moment. That means a sudden manifestation of the divine. We have this eye-opening mountaintop moment, a meeting of the divine and the human, heaven and earth. Now, as much as we would love to have mountaintop moments like these, because they are certainly awe-inspiring, but as N.T. Wright reminds us, most of us and most of life is spent within the veil of the ordinary. Jesus led these disciples up the mountain, but he also leads them back down the mountain. And down the mountain there's a distraught father, a hurting child, blind folks, broken folks, folks wandering far from God's kingdom and God's purposes. Back down off the mountaintop, there's plenty of disappointment and discouragement. There's fear and frailty, sickness and suffering. Down here where we live, there is life and death. Now, we can go through it all by keeping our eyes on ourselves, by just putting one foot in front of another, just slogging our way through, and maybe our strategies will work and maybe they won't. But I think this transfiguration, this eye-opening moment, is for all of us. A nudge, a gentle whisper, look up. And when we open our eyes to Jesus, we begin to see the fullness of God's kingdom. Because Jesus isn't just with us in mountaintop moments, but down here in the middle of the messes of our lives, in the middle of the messes of our worlds. See, whatever we're wrestling with, Jesus is bigger than that. Jesus is big enough to love us all. Jesus is big enough to heal, big enough to make us whole, big enough to forgive, big enough to bring life into the midst of death, hope into corners that seem hopeless, and peace into the midst of chaos. And so, look up. Blessings to you.